You are listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 30th of January 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program. Protests in Germany as a firewall against working with the far right was torn down in Parliament yesterday. We'll have the latest. After that, we'll take a broader look at the day's newspapers. We'll also have Monocle regular Juliet Linley is with me right here in the London studio to talk about Graubünden.
Yes, Graubünden, that lovely southeastern Swiss region that is so known for its nature. But I didn't really think how it would make the top of the list in terms of welcoming people. But there we go.
The welcoming Swiss. We'll delve into that. Then it's on to Monocle's traveling roadshow with Simone Bouvier at an international comics festival, Grace Charlton at Copenhagen Fashion Week, and finally, if all that wasn't enough, it's Thursday. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, what is on the global countdown?
Savadi Krab, Chris. Today we're looking at the great music scene in Thailand. And yes, I've been practicing my Thai.
You worked hard on that one. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. While much of the Western world has seen a shift to more far-right governments in power, Germany is one of those nations where there's been a clear line from traditional political parties, blocking the far right from governing in any shape or form. That rule was broken yesterday when a parliamentary motion calling for a halt to asylum seekers coming to Germany was put forward by the center-right Christian Democrats and backed by the far-right Alternative for Germany. All of this comes just weeks before federal elections in Germany, and we're joined now from Berlin by Aaron Burnett, Senior Fellow at the Democratic Initiative Berlin. Aaron, thanks for coming on the show to unpack this for us. Tell us, first of all, how this all unfolded in the Bundestag yesterday.
Thank you for having me, Chris. So the Christian Democrats, led by Friedrich Merz, the chancellor candidate for them, and that is the party that is currently leading the polls in Germany at the moment, brought forth two motions to the Bundestag. One of which ended up passing only with the support of the far right, AfD, Alternative for Germany. It also passed with the support of the Liberal Free Democrats and the Christian Democrats and was voted against by the center-left Social Democrats and Greens, who are, of course, a part of the government. It was very, very narrowly passed as well. We're talking 348 votes in favor and 345 against. And this particular motion calls on the government to basically put in place, permanent border restrictions for the foreseeable future, and rejecting all attempts to enter the country illegally without exception. And I quote. However, this motion does not actually have the force of law. It simply calls on the government to launch these permanent border controls. The government, of course, can simply refuse to do so. There was another motion that did fail, but this one is the one that's, of course, getting all of the attention today because it only passed the Bundestag with the approval of the far right yesterday, which is a new one for Germany.
This is a new one for Germany. The symbolism of that is what's been kind of really covered and important here and part of the debate, whether or not the bill will actually become law. I do wonder if you could tell us more about how Friedrich Merz, the leader of the Christian Democrats, justified this move.
I think there's a few reasons why he is able to justify this particular move. We'll see over the next few weeks whether the German public buys it or not. But there's a few things. First of all, number one, he will point out that a very healthy majority of Germans actually support the measures that that were listed in this particular resolution. Most Germans do want a tougher stance on migration, on crime, on asylum. They want more policing. They want all of these things. Internal security is very much a big theme in the election campaign. And Friedrich Merz essentially is making the argument that the Social Democrats and the Greens forced his hand into having to do this. He did say that this resolution was shared with the Social Democrats and the Greens some time ago, that they had the opportunity to have input on it, to support parts of it, that they were open to negotiating on this resolution, and that they were rejected and therefore, backed into a corner into getting the support from the AfD. But the other thing the other reason that Friedrich Merz will use, or has been using to justify this as well, is that the Brandmauer, or the firewall, is not in fact broken. That is his argument. We see a crack in that firewall, I would certainly argue. The fact that this motion has passed only with AfD support. But, I would also say that in some ways, Merz is correct here in saying that the firewall is not broken because he has said that he will not govern with the AfD, that is simply not going to happen, that no coalition will ever be made with the AfD. So expect a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of debate in Germany in the next few weeks about what exactly the firewall is. Does the firewall mean that you don't govern with the AfD, you never have a formal coalition agreement with them, but that you can rely on them in parliament for support? Or does the firewall mean, no, you cannot pass anything through parliament if it has AfD support, if you cannot, if you require AfD support to pass that motion?
Well, just quickly, Aaron, when you look at the elections, though, is there any sense, though, that there might be some form of, cooperation after the elections? Would the Christian Democrats consider, one could imagine, a minority government with tacit support of the AfD? Is there any talk of that, or are they definite that if they win the next election, they will form a government, a coalition government, which would have to come most likely with parties from more the left?
That's certainly, there has been absolutely no noises in Berlin at the moment of having a minority government, of seeing a CDU minority government. There is this expectation that there will be a coalition between the CDU and either the Social Democrats or the Greens, with it looking as if it is more likely that a coalition with the Social Democrats would happen because the CDU wants to get tougher on migration in particular, and they don't feel that they can do that in a coalition with the Greens. But there is absolutely, I have not heard any chatter about a minority government. That would be exceptionally unprecedented for Germany. There has never been a minority government in Germany, certainly not on a federal level, and it would, it really would give rise to this idea that Germany is an exceptionally unstable, impossible to govern country at a time when that is the exact opposite image that Friedrich Merz and the Christian Democrats will want to portray. As for formal coalitions with anyone other than the Social Democrats and the Greens, the Liberal Free Democrats may very well not make the 5% threshold to enter the Bundestag at all. And the AfD, well, there is that social taboo on ever governing with them. But at the same time, it's also against the CDU's own party constitution. Their party constitution says that they cannot, in fact, enter a coalition agreement with either the left party or with the AfD, with the extreme parties as they call them. And really, truly, I've spoken to a lot of people that I know within the Christian Democrats this morning, and a lot of them are shocked even by this and are upset even by this. And this is coming from within the CDU itself. I think that moving any further than this, I think, could risk splitting the party entirely.
Aaron Burnett, thank you very much for joining us from Berlin. And now here's Hassan Anderson with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. A passenger plane carrying 64 people has collided mid-air with a military helicopter while landing at Ronald Reagan National Airport near Washington, D.C. American Airlines confirmed that there were 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board the aircraft. The U.S. Army confirmed that its helicopter was carrying 3 personnel. 8 hostages, 3 Israeli and 5 Thai, are set to be released from Gaza today. 2 rounds of releases have already taken place. 8 of the remaining Israeli hostages set to be released are dead, according to the Israeli government. And the iconic Dr. Yellow, a brightly coloured train that has patrolled Japanese train tracks for 24 years, has arrived at Tokyo Station, greeted by a crowd of cheering fans, completing its final journey. The T4 train, owned by Central Japan Railway, was responsible for inspecting railways, overhead wires and track signals prior to its retirement due to age. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Hassan. Let's cross over to our Zurich studio now there for a rundown of the day's newspapers. And joining me from Dufourstrasse 90 is Noelle Salmi. Noelle, good to have you on the show. Good afternoon to Zurich.
Hi, good afternoon.
I wanted to start with a story that you have for us that kind of follows on from what we were just talking about in Germany, because Donald Trump is saying that Guantanamo Bay will be expanded to include 30,000 migrants.
Yes, that's right. He announced that the infamous detention facility, which both of his predecessors, President Biden and President Obama, attempted unsuccessfully to close, will now be expanded to include criminals that he said are so bad that they don't even trust illegal migrants. They don't even trust the countries of origin to hold them. So they want to put them there to make sure they can't get out.
And how has this been going down when you read the newspapers, when you read reactions around the world? Because Guantanamo Bay certainly has a special significance over the years.
Yes, it really does. I mean, because of the enhanced interrogation techniques, which were likened to torture, because of the dubious circumstances under which many of the detainees were held without trial, without any chance to communicate with the outside world, it really has been a symbol of the excesses of American power. Remember, it was opened in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks by George W. Bush as part of the war on terror. So it's been a symbol of those excesses, and efforts have been made to close the facility. And of course, Trump is going the other way, which is typical of the new stance of this administration.
Well, let's move on to some news where you are, because there are a few new proposed laws being coming up in Switzerland that will affect couples seeking children.
Yes, that's right. So one law was proposed yesterday and the other one just this morning. Yesterday, Switzerland announced that foreign adoptions will now be illegal in the country. Right now, that only affects about 30 couples a year, as there are only about 30 adoptions. But adoptions were much higher from overseas in the 1970s through the 1990s. And irregularities and abuses were pretty much common knowledge, but nothing was really done about it. The thinking being that, oh, well, these children are going to be better off in a comfortable Swiss home instead. But for example, in Sri Lanka, poor village women were known to have sold their babies for very small amounts of money. In Brazil, because of the required legislation in Switzerland to have both biological parents sign on to the adoption, papers were forged. Sometimes simply the adoptive parents' names were put on there as the parents of this adopted child. So the thinking is that now the interests of the adoptee are important of the child and not just the parent's desire to have a kid. So they have basically said, we're not going to do this at all anymore.
So there is another aspect of this, though, as I understand, as you said, there's 2 laws. So this is one that will make foreign adoptions illegal, but then there is something that will actually help women to get egg donations in Switzerland.
That's right. This other legislation will make it easier for hopeful parents. Until now, egg donation has been illegal in Switzerland. Only sperm donation, which parent couples use for in vitro fertilization, for example. Egg donation was considered a more complex and invasive procedure and therefore wasn't legal in Switzerland. But the result was that women were going to Spain and to Czech Republic to have to have the egg donations. And in those countries, those donations can occur anonymously, which would mean that the child later born in Switzerland couldn't find out who their biological parents were. So now parents will be able to do that, or prospective parents will be able to do that in Switzerland. And as well, they won't have to be married. In 2022, the introduction of the Marriage for All Act meant that two married female women could get let's say sperm donation, but that did not apply to unmarried couples. So it has been an expansion, which is good news.
Just finally, Noelle, the Sundance Film Festival, you have news from that. It's moving to a new location.
Yes, that's right. Sundance has announced that it has outgrown its lovely Park City setting. I was fortunate enough to attend 3 of the film festivals, and really was wonderful. But you could see even a few years ago that Park City was bursting at the seams. The town of 8,000 full-time residents takes in 20,000 people for 10 days each January. Traffic slows to a crawl, and therefore the organizers have decided it needs to go somewhere else. The contenders are Salt Lake City, which is just 45 minutes away, which would allow a few ancillary events to still take place in Park City. Boulder, Colorado, which would keep a little bit of the ski town vibe. And then Cincinnati, Ohio, which I don't really know why that was a contender. I think most people are hoping that it is one of the first 2 options.
Cincinnati, Ohio. That is very far away. Noelle Salmi, thank you very much for joining us here on The Briefing. And listening to that was our usual Zurich Monocle correspondent, if you will, Juliet Linley, broadcaster and journalist. Juliet, you happen to be right here in London at Midori House, so we had to bring you on. It's your first time here.
Such an honor and a privilege to be here and to be in Studio 1 at Midori House.
In Studio 1 at Midori House, as opposed to in Dufourstrasse 90 in Zurich. It's great to have you here. Even though you are here in London, you are going to talk about Switzerland.
Yes, so of course, right? You brought me in just to do that. But I'm going to look at how a well-known booking app has put Graubünden in its top 5 most welcoming regions. So it's interesting because I guess if you just off the top of your head think of the Swiss, you might think of them as sort of earnest insurers or cutthroat financiers.
Welcoming is not the first word that comes to mind.
But then, and I have to say, you also are kind of wondering, which we talked about before, is perhaps when you least expect it, then you're going to give better reviews on the welcoming front because you really didn't expect them to even smile at you. Whereas perhaps in a warm Mediterranean country, if someone is a bit curt, then you're like, oh, they're not welcoming at all. That's what we talked about before. But
yes, we wonder if we understand this sort of result was based on customer reviews for Booking.com. So therefore, it is this question of like, yes, what makes a customer review? What expectation do you have when you go somewhere? Is Graubünden welcoming?
There you go. So I did a little research, and actually hospitality is a big thing in Graubünden. And it's also because the region was historically a hub of the Alpine trade routes. So you had a lot of travelers coming through, and the people would make the travelers feel at home. And I am sure that our valiant hero, our CEO, Tyler Burley, will agree that it is a very welcoming region. He goes often to St. Moritz, which is the Engadine region of Graubünden. And it is known for its beautiful hotels and its beautiful towns, but also for its skiing and its summer hiking, as well as the horse racing on the frozen lake of St. Moritz, and they even play cricket on the frozen lakes. So it is actually very welcoming, and they have delicious food and so on. So to your point, you would perhaps not necessarily use that as a description of the Swiss, but actually in Graubünden it is very to the point.
What you're saying is hospitality is in their blood. this is a long, long tradition.
That's it, exactly. And the other thing is that Graubünden, I didn't know this. I spent a lot of holidays in Graubünden as a kid, but then when I moved to Zurich recently and I was talking to colleagues, that Graubünden is very, it's sort of the Tuscany of Switzerland. So it's country folk, but they're not country bumpkins. It's mountain folk, but they're also very sort of chic, and it's chic to have a number plate with Graubünden. You're not considered like Aargau is very non-chic. That's another rural part of Switzerland. But then it's interesting because you would think, oh, but wouldn't Ticino, the Italian-speaking region, be the Tuscany of Switzerland? No, it's not considered it because it's. But the city of Lugano is now in a very famous fashion magazine that it's better to see it than to go to Como instead, which is just across the border. So there you go.
Interesting developments. We're probably going to have to bring on our senior foreign correspondent, Carlotta Rebello, at some point because Madeira was at the top of this list, and that is where she's from. But Julian Linley, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. This is The Briefing. I'm Chris Termek, and it's time now for something of a festival review because Monocle's team has spread out this week to cover Copenhagen Fashion Week and the International Comics Festival, Bande Dessinée in Angoulême in France. And yes, we are going to marry these two disparate events into one item because I am joined from Copenhagen by Grace Charlton, Monocle's associate editor covering design and fashion, and by Simone Bouvier, Monocle's Paris bureau chief, who is in Angoulême. Grace, I'm going to start with you. For some way of marrying these two together, I have to ask you, what has been the most comical thing about Copenhagen's Fashion Week so far?
Oh my gosh, I was wondering how you were going to tie these together. This is very clever. The most comical thing, every fashion show has just this, parade of peacocks outside trying to get photographed for the street style. That's always very entertaining.
Peacocks. Well, there we go. And I'm going to ask you, Simone, the same kind of question in reverse. How fashionable is the comic book fair?
Well, I won't lie. I hope nobody's listening to me, but not very. I think everybody is very much wearing their kind of artist corduroy pants and thick rimmed glasses. Everybody's here to showcase their latest work and maybe try to sign the freshest new talent in bande dessinée.
So tell us a little bit more. I'll stick with you for the moment, Simone. Then, if it is not quite the most fashionable events, there is perhaps a little bit of a geeky side to this. But do talk about the importance of this event for France.
Yeah, well, for what it lacks for in glamour, it makes more than makes up for in the kind of breadth of artistic talent on display. It's the largest comic book fair in the world. It's been held here since 1974, and it's the most important date on the calendar, really, both for publishers in search of new talents and artists who are looking to get their latest projects financed, as well as BD fans from all of France, but also all over the world, who flock to the city to buy the latest releases, meet their favorite artists. There's a lot of signings everywhere. Just to give you an idea, they're expected to have 200,000 visitors in town for the festival. The population of Angoulême is normally 40,000. So it's really a major event of the French cultural calendar. And Libération, a major daily newspaper, is entirely in bande dessinée or comics today in honor of it. So it's really a big deal here.
It is a big deal, and there's certainly a sort of cultish following, one might say, to an event like the Bande Dessinée event in France. And Grace, I wonder if there is a similar cultish element to the Copenhagen Fashion Week. What's happening over there? Who's following whom? Who's going to which shows?
Definitely. There's a huge community of Danish influencers, for lack of a better term, who come to every show and they really support their local creatives. So I think they've really done well in terms of a fashion week and succeeding to build that community. But yeah, every show will have its own diehard fans who show up in head to toe new season. So that's really fun to see.
So what are you a diehard fan about? What are you going to see?
Ooh, tonight I'm seeing Marimekko, well, I say tonight at 3 p.m. And it's being held at the airport, which is really cool, in a hall designed by Willem Lauritsen, who's a Danish architect. And then after that, I'm going to rotate. And then there are a few dinners, a few other shows, a few jewelry showcases. So it's busy.
It is busy. The airport is an interesting one. Have they ever used that before? I mean, talk about what kind of spaces they use in Copenhagen for this.
Yeah, I mean, they really have such a treasure trove of modernist venues and churches. I've just been also to a lot of hangars, like big empty industrial like spaces, which is fun. Copenhagen is really spoiled for choice thanks to that design heritage they can tap into.
And Simon, just to come back to you, one interesting aspect maybe of this comic book fair is even though it is France's darling, there's also a very thriving community of Spanish comic book authors. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it can seem, especially from the Anglophone world. I'm here with Virginia McLeod, the Monocle's books editor. And I think what struck us is that it seems from the Anglophone world that it's kind of the province of nerds, bande dessinée and comics are. But in reality, it's the Anglophone world that's missing out on this medium because there are really people from everywhere, not just France and Belgium. Japan, obviously huge with manga, South Korea, and also, as you mentioned, Spain. They're the guests of honor at this year's festival. They have a big delegation of nearly 100 artists that are here to showcase their latest work. Comic books in Spain are a 130 million euro a year industry, even though they're far from being the biggest player. We heard that the authors here are growing in influence. One of the titles that is best known is a kind of film noir-inspired series from the early 2000s all the way to 2010 called Black Sad that features humanoid characters with animal faces, including the title character, John Blacksad, who is a kind of brooding cat and who's a detective who tries to solve murders. That has been developed by two Spanish authors who are some of the biggest stars in the Spanish scene. But they also have a big wave of fresh talent that is fueling this homegrown industry that is a bit of a minnow right now, but is really ascendant. And, the sad thing is that all of this talent and this creativity, it covers not just childish topics, but also a lot of adult things, science, societal issues, architecture, you name it, in all sorts of different artistic ways. And really only a tiny fraction of this incredibly vibrant artistic offering is available to English-speaking audiences because only the huge mega bestsellers end up getting translated into English. So we're really missing out on a cultural phenomenon for all of us who are not fluent in French or Spanish or Japanese.
Simone Bouvier and Grace Charlton will let you both get back to Monocle's traveling circus. This is The Briefing. And finally, on today's show, our regular listeners will know that global countdown sound you just heard, and they'll know what's about to happen because I'm joined by Monocle's musical curator, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Give me that Thai introduction again, Faye.
Savadi crop. Sorry, I did practice a lot, but it's hard. And apparently, if you are a woman, you say Savadi ka, which I find it much easier. But as a man, I have to do the right thing, right? So,
I suppose so. We'll let you do the right thing. So we are heading to Thailand. That is the spoiler for this global countdown. What made you go there?
Well, first of all, I think everybody's talking about Thailand in 2025. It's a country that does well. It's a country that Monaco is having an increasingly larger presence. And I don't think many people know about Thai music. They have a very strong local music scene. All I can tell you, Chris, they love a good ballad, as you will see in this top 5.
Ballad territory.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
And very local. I'm always a fan of local. We talk about this often on the show. It's nice when you go to a country that doesn't have too much international in it and really takes pride in its own music.
Absolutely. Let's start with number 5. It's a very smooth track. It's all about teenage love. Let's have a listen to number 5 with One Mai with Pen Pai Dai Mai.
Baby girl just wanna be to school in the first time แค่อยากพบเธอสักครั้งไม่ใช่ว่าเพียงแค่โทรหาพอฉันต้องเข้าเรียนด้วยเธอไม่มีเวลาได้โปรดนะเธอมาเจอกับฉันไม่ก็อย่าปล่อยให้รอนานการได้คุยกับเธอนั้นมีคุณค่าทางใจแล้วเธอก็รู้ว่าคนอย่างฉันนั้นไม่เคยวิ่งตามใครขอเวลา
We need candles, Faye, for this segment. You know, we need to just put up our lighters, like whatever we could do.
I'll translate one part of the lyrics, just so you see how sweet it is. Is it possible for you to come and hug me while I sleep? And you will know that I'm the school singer. I'm not a playboy. And he's right. We all want to date the school singer, not the playboy.
We all want the school singer, sure.
And he does look like a teenager, one might. I mean, he's a new sensation there in Thailand. I think we started in a very cute way.
That was very cute. Okay, are we sticking with cute?
Less cute, but more Monocle Radio appropriate. In fact, I think I might add this track to the playlist. It's very cool. There's some touches of 80s synth in there. They are a very successful indie band from Thailand. It's called Tilly Birds and Polycat with Longchamp, Only You Can.
We have a bopping audience behind the glass of studio watchers at the moment, so I think that's a good sign.
They're all excited.
I mean, we do all work in Monocle, and this is kind of what we listen to.
Exactly, and it's going to be on the playlist as well. I've decided it's really cool. They were found in a TV show, not X Factor, but a show called Band Lab. And they found it. I mean, they're super successful in Thailand.
Band Lab. So you're going to start watching Band Lab?
I think I will. If they found the Tilly Birds, who else they're going to find it?
Who else are they going to find? Or any other of the other top 5 from this band creation lab? There
is actually. It's a very popular show there in Thailand. But number 3, we're going back to this kind of love, slightly smooth. And a lot of saxophone in this one as well. Do you like a saxophone?
I love a saxophone. My mom loves a saxophone. I'm just going to throw that out there. When I grew up, she always loved hearing the saxophone in any music.
Please send this to your mom. 3 Men Down with Plang Rock.
This is giving me Chicago vibes, which was one of my mom's favorite bands.
If You Leave Me Now. A great song, great song. And, you know, this song is about love again, but it's not the love saying, I love you all the time. It's about those little acts. You don't need to say you love someone, but it's the small acts of life that people will notice that you care for each other.
The little gestures. We're back to cute. We're back to cute.
That's very cute, actually.
What do we have at number 2?
Cute territory as well. But it's funny because when you look at the guy, he looks very tough. He has got a lot of tattoos on. You almost think that he was sing like metal, hip-hop or something like that.
You're ready for it, and then it just goes cute again.
It just goes very cute. It's very mellow. And, well, I'll tell you the translation of this track, but I'm not sure if Google Translate is right on this one. It's Lek Rachamet with Chai Pen Nai Kai Pen Bo.
I'm loving your pronunciations, Faye. Can I just say you leaned into that one.
I promise to all our Thai listeners that I will practice my Thai. And apparently the translation for the title of the song is "The mind is the master, the body is the shoulder." It kind of makes sense.
Is the shoulder?
Yeah, like supporting all the weight.
Okay,
I guess.
Sure. Yes, there's very thoughtful lyrics.
Very, very thoughtful.
Very thoughtful and cute. Are we? What's our theme for number 1?
It's a little bit cute, but if you look at the video, it's not that cute because the video portrays Godzilla invading Thailand, and apparently,
oh my,
yeah, it's
such a shame we're not a TV show right now. I would like to see that.
But I would recommend people to watch the video because they even ask authorization for the Japanese company that owns the rights for Godzilla. So it's a big deal, and this has been a blockbuster of a song in Thailand. It's been number 1 for quite a few weeks. They say it's a rock band, but I find it very gentle. It's again soft rock, perhaps. It's the band Cocktail and Q Fleur with Yours Ever.
This is about as heavy as Thai music gets, Faye. I think that's what we're finding out here.
And I'll remind people, Godzilla is invading Thailand, but this man is carrying...
Yes, you have to imagine that while listening to that song.
And this man is carrying a sunflower in his hands to give to his girlfriend. And then Godzilla kind of attacks him, but then he rescues him after. I mean, it's a really mad story, but in the end, everything's fine. He managed to give the sunflower to his girlfriend, and they live happily ever after.
I'm very glad you told us, Faye. I think we would have been worried that there would have been a bad news ending to that.
Of course, no deaths there.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you very much for joining us. And that's all for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Tom Webb, our researcher was Maisie Ringer, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.